Okay, so welcome everybody. Hang on, let me just make sure I do at least see myself. Oh, there we go. Otherwise, I get confused. And yes, welcome everybody for this wonderful opportunity to launch Edwina's latest book. Edwina has spent a long time writing and researching this wonderful book, Dear Madman, which was launched 3 weeks ago at Avid Reader in Brisbane. And it's the book that Edwina had been wanting to write since she was 7 years old. In fact, there's surely many of us who know what it's like to want to write since you've been 7 years old. But Edwina actually had a story that her nana had told her and that she carried with her all these years. And it was a story about the man who murdered her nana's sister in 1911. So that's not actually a spoiler. That is sort of part of the premise, and it's very obvious from the very start. But for decades, nobody in the family was allowed to talk about this tragic death at the hands of a violent, mentally ill laborer who had been unwittingly hired by Edwina's great-grandfather as a farm hand on the family farm in the Lockyer Valley in West Queensland. And the story has haunted Edwina's family for decades. The trauma of the girl's death has been passed on through the generations. And I'll let Edwina speak to this in a minute, but what I find it so fascinating, and which is very unusual also uh, for the story of a murderer, is it's written as a historical true crime memoir that also reads like a fast-paced thriller. After Edwina's launch, there were lots of comments that people said I was up all night reading this. And
We like to keep people awake.
so it's a gripping read. And the other thing that's really unique about it is it's written in several voices. So there is the voice of the narrator, Edwina, who reflects on the process of writing and I guess creating or recreating this story. Then there is, and this is very unique, the first person voice of the murderer, the actual perpetrator of this crime. And Edwina has written this story with compassion for the period in which this person lived, the mentally ill, the outsiders of society. And then, of course, there's also the voice of the family and the members of the family and the omniscient narrator. So, Edwina, maybe to give us a flavor of this story before I'll ask you some more questions about the writing process and so on, we could get you to do a reading, maybe from the very beginning, and to give us a sense of the different voices that you had to create to recreate this story.
So I had my own memoir voice, and that actually came last. It was, I was trying to write it as a straight memoir, but life intervened, and actually the voice of the murderer himself intervened very strongly. So I'd been doing a whole lot of research, 4 years of research it took me because I had to find his ancestors to get hold of his mental health records. So, and that took a long, long time because I had to find the people who were connected to him. And yeah, he and his siblings had all been in orphanages, and so they were more difficult to trace. But so this is how I start the book. Stories call to us. This story has called to me ever since Nana Franny first told me about the man who killed her sister. I was 7, the same age Nana was when it happened. One winter afternoon, Nana Franny and I sat together on a daybed near her kitchen, looking at her photo album, dust motes sinking in the light, the air scented with bone broth bubbling on her stove. I was excited to have Nana to myself, none of my younger siblings around making messes. I could tell Nana anything, even about the bad dreams that had been haunting me night after night. As we sat together, a thick black card with golden borders and a faded photograph of a little girl fell from the back of the album onto the lino. I picked it up, heavy, in my hand. So that's my voice. But then after doing all of that research, I went down to Varun Writer's house in New South Wales. If anybody else has been there, it's a fabulous place. There's just other writers there and somebody cooking for us and treating us like we're special, which is just wonderful. And you get to talk about writing all the time. So I got there with my 15 kilos of printed out research because I like things hard copy. And I'd lugged it all that way. And I was going to sit down and I was just going to write it as a straight memoir. But this is what happened. Decades later, after years of exhaustive research uncovering the truth behind the family myth, I knew I had to begin to write. As one of the last who remembered Nana and her sisters, I owed it to them and to my children and to all who came after to at least attempt to forgive this man of the dark shadows, to break the curse so we could all at last be free. But as I sat down to write, it was not my words that poured like a flood onto the page. Another stronger voice demanded to be heard.
And sorry, can I just remind everybody to mute yourself? So maybe Edwina, as the administrator of the meeting, could you mute people? Because I just could hear somebody.
Yeah. Yes, I think we're doing her dishes. Yeah, so you can see that when I started to write at Varuna, I'd picked up a book the night before, and it was the autobiography of, or maybe the biography of Sheldon Lee, who'd been an adoptive child of the Darrell Lee chocolate family, who were a very weird kettle of fish. But he'd ended up in prison. And something about his voice, I don't know if it was him, but when I sat down, actually, when I woke up that morning, this voice was in my head. And I knew that this was the voice I had to record. And this is almost exactly the same as what it came out as the first day. I'm not as stupid as they think I am. Been called a wronger ever since I remember. Never asked to be born, being who I am. And I'm sorry about what happened, but it wasn't my fault. It was them with their noses in the air, high and mighty. Reckon they know it all, but I pulled them down a peg or two. Now they know what it feels like. So that's the murderer's voice, and that murderer's voice just kept on coming.
I think it's Anne with an R. Could you just mute yourself? Or Edwina, could you mute it, please? Because I cannot.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Edwina, what did that feel like, having that voice that you knew was a murderer?
It was a bit creepy. But, you know, as writers, some of us are lucky enough to, when we're writing characters, we get their voices in our heads. So I was already used to dealing very much in my imagination, as most writers are. But when it slipped into more intuition, the border between intuition and imagination is very slim. There was some times that I put in the book where I was actually terrified, where I felt his presence very, very strongly in my room, even to the extent of feeling the bed indent and a smell of cigarette smoke. And that was really creepy. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Jessie. Good question.
Oh, and that's Jessie. Hello, Jessie.
Yeah. Hi, Jessie. Okay. What else?
So that was the voice of Joe Throsby, the murderer. And you also then go on, and I really like how you do this at the beginning, because I did, of course, read the manuscript, but I think that was manuscript number, I don't know, 65.
maybe only 65 or 165.
So after Joe gets his chance to tell us that he's not as stupid as people think, we go back to Edwina, and she tells us the voice was strong and clear. And then we go to the family, because I couldn't let this be the only voice from the past, you say here on page 10. And maybe I'll let Edwina read this rather than me.
Yeah. This story was told to me by the siblings. Oh, sorry, I get emotional still sometimes reading this. Who survived the murdered girl. It's their story. a story of children, their lives, their loss. I saw those three little girls in pinafores coming home from school, just as the murderer had once. Like a movie flickering onto a screen, the girls came into view. I heard the high-pitched lilt of their voices. So then I start with Beth, the baby of the family. She's
And so the next chapter, just so for if you haven't got a copy of the book, we know whose voice it is from the text. So the next one is family. So now we know, now we've gone from Edwina, the writer, the self-reflective writer, to the murderer, to the family itself. So this is interesting.
I've got all the sisters coming. So my nana Franny was the fourth of five children. There were four girls and one brother. So there's Grace, the eldest, and she and the brother have both been forced to stay at home. My great-grandfather had been a headmaster first, and he had won a ballot of a land lottery. So they just were splitting up land, and people put in, basically you put in a vote, and if you got lucky, you won that piece of land stolen from the Yurgarapal or the Kidabal people. So those two, the eldest two, were forced to stop schooling, even though they were both very bright. And they worked, and the girls, the little girls who were still going to school, come home, and the middle child, Alla, has won a maths prize, and she's been showing it off to Grace, who's got to stick up her bum because she's not at school anymore, and she used to win the prizes. And Beth, feeling the tension, takes the card, and she runs away after the house with it. Alla took off after her. Come back here. The others ran behind them, laughing. At 13, Grace had the longest legs and was soon gaining. Beth ran fast, laughing. She raced around and slammed straight into the thighs of a stranger. A man who snatched her up, tipped her upside down so her drawers showed, tickled her belly and swung her till she squealed. Grace rounded the corner to find Beth red-faced and upside down in the arms of a stranger almost as old as Pa. The man was dressed in rags and smelt like Frau Bergmann's billy goat. Alice slammed into Grace's back, then hid behind her, peeking out at the stinky man. Grace glared at his hairy hands and yellow-stained moustache that swallowed his mouth like a fat, hairy slug. His eyes glinted as they caught her own, and her tummy flipped. Blue, their dog, was wagging his tail happily beside him and hadn't given any warning. Some guard dog. And that's the kid's voice. So that was actually the trickiest bit to write because I wanted to get, in order to have the voice of the murderer and the voice of the victim, I had to have all of the children's voices in there, which meant I had to do omniscient voice, where you give voice to multiple characters. And this was my most horrible challenge because it's very difficult to manage where we're not just sliding in and out of people's heads. Or, Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, they got away with it. They were them. I was not getting away with it. And most people, I think, we just can't. So making sure that each character had a section. But because I wanted to bring them to life, those children again, I really needed their inner life and I needed their own view because each of them carried so much grief and unforgiveness with them.
Wow. So thank you. We will open this also for questions from the audience, and we'll also give you a writing prompt and some tips. But let me ask you a question first. You talked at the book launch in Brisbane, and I found it very fascinating. What makes a murderer, and how were you able to write his character and his story with so much compassion, given the grief and the pain that he had inflicted on generations and the intergenerational
Yeah. So
caused?
Besides researching the history of the crime, I was also researching what makes a murderer. So I was watching a lot of documentaries, the Werner Herzog stuff, reading lots of stuff about criminals, especially criminals who are criminally insane and multiple murderers. And there were many commonalities between them. One of those commonalities was a brutal childhood. And one of the first things I discovered when I went to the archives researching this book was the death certificate of his father. So he had just, they'd come out from England after the convicts were no longer available for free labour. They imported a whole lot of men and their families from the poor parts of England, illiterate, troubled people, from the poorhouses, from the workhouses. So those people had ended up in those places because they were from a history of difficulty anyway. So that when they came here, as all of us know who travel, our difficulties don't stay at home, they travel with us. So this man, he was a good man. They had a lot of kids. But then one day he had a fit, which resulted in a heart attack, and he died. The death of a father in those days meant you were destitute. Unless you had wealthy relatives, their relatives were poor. Not only that, mum was illiterate and couldn't even write to tell them what had happened. They had very little community support. They were left. And mum, though she tried, she gave birth on the same night that dad died. So it was an extremely difficult time, which some months later, the neighbours found the family starving and the children were taken to an orphanage. And at that point, because I too had lost my father, I understood and automatically had empathy for the murderer because I could see him as the 4-year-old child who this had happened to. Not only that, I'd been working for several years with forgotten Australians who had been in institutions in Australia in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 1980s, not the 1780s, which was when, I almost said Brian, was when Joe was there. So I knew what it must have been like in those days and that the treatment that he would have received as a child with difficulties as well, because he developed epilepsy from an early age, I think. There were some school records, so you can also access those at the archives, that showed he couldn't concentrate. I mean, also, when people are in an institution and struggling to survive, you go into your survival brain, which makes it very difficult for you to process higher learning, or not even higher learning, be able to process anything to learn. But anyway, I'm just conscious of the time, and I think we'd better move
I
on.
just wanted to quickly sum this part up just for those who didn't go to the launch or don't have a copy of this book. Dear Madman, can you just quickly talk to us about the title and the cover photo?
Yes.
And by the way, we did a mock-up of this in, where was it? Taormina.
Italy, yeah,
Our Italy
Taormina.
retreat. And it came out beautifully.
Yes, we did it. Kirsten's very good with those things. So Dear Madman was the title that the murderer himself wrote after he killed the girl. And this was always part of Nana's story. I mean, it was an incredible story as well. That was hard to, you can't forget it. So part of the story was that after he'd killed the girl, the murderer ran and he hid and he wrote 3 notes. I discovered in my research that a form of epileptic psychosis includes graphomania, where you do write.
Wow.
And so this was him in the midst of psychosis. And I think that is a clue to him actually being in a state of psychosis during the killing, because he then compulsively wrote 3 notes of confession, trying to blame other people, but all of them started with Dear Madman because he couldn't spell madam.
Yes, and when I
Oh,
recently showed this book to somebody quickly, they actually misread it as madam. So yeah,
yeah,
Dear Madam, yes, which is
yes.
what Joe tried to
Same
write.
beginning, same ending. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's why that title, he gave it to me himself.
And that is actually Joe. This is the photo that you
That's
received.
the photo that, yeah, arrived at Varuna while I was writing the first draft. His photo arrived and I propped it up and had him there inspiring me as I wrote his sections. But then when we got to the murder, there was no way I could keep him up. I had to put him face down then. It was too intense.
And at night, did you put it like under outside the room or?
Yes, and I've done rituals here, put him up with the photos of the ancestors, praying for it to get published. And my young nephew came in and just went, "Oh my God, Auntie Weenie, you're such a weirdo." The
So
sage.
before before we go to the writing prompt, maybe just one question or two from the audience, just while we talk about the book specifically. Any questions right now? Raise your hands.
Oh, goody. Let's go to the work.
Goody. That saves us some time.
Okay, so my memoir is quite experimental.
Oh,
Oh,
there's
hang on,
Kirsty and
hang on.
there's
Kirsty and
Jessie.
Jessie asked questions.
Okay.
Here we go.
Kirsty Nankarao, who is the author of Himalayan Dreams. Wait for it. I've got a copy. Ask your question.
Just wondering how you feel getting this out of your body.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kirsty. There's Kirsty's book.
There's Kirsty's book. Kirsty
Thank
came to
you.
one of my early retreats.
So it
But
feels
she's a
fantastic,
journalist, so she knew already how to write.
doesn't it? Did you feel relieved and very happy now that it's gone?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And because I'd carried this story since I was a child and been trying to write it since I was 7, and been trying to get it published for so long, to finally get it very much how I envisaged it, but as a complete thing that it wasn't really until I got it, I read it, found all the typos, and went, oh, no. And then I put it down again that I realized I have put that down and it's not in my head anymore. So it is a huge relief for me. I feel very freed. And you'll find out in the book anyway, so I may as well tell you I'm a bit of a hippie freak. I do yoga every day. So I do a lot of meditating. And through this book, I called on the different ancestors. And in the last couple of weeks, I've had some of the children come and thank me who have been the hardest ones to reach. So the brother came and thanked me, which was really lovely, and the little girl herself as well, the victim. So that was very heartening for me. Grandma's still a bit grumpy at me, the great grandma. But I
There's
hope
always
she,
got to be some
hope she,
collateral damage.
pardon, Kirsty?
I said there's always got to be some collateral damage.
Yes, yes, I hope she'll be all right. But, yeah, great question. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks,
Well
Kirsty.
done.
Thank
And
you.
Kirsty's book again.
Jessie.
Great read.
So this is your actual family?
Yes, this is my family. So it's my mother's mother is Nana, Nana Franny, who me and my siblings all adored. She was our rock. She was our safe place when we were growing up. And she was a Montessori trained primary school teacher. So she was very warm, very creative, loving Nana. We were very lucky. We were born into a wonderful, loving family. We just
But
had
you did
this.
have some opposition from your family about writing this book initially. I believe they're okay now. In fact, I was at the launch. Your mother did not,
Yes.
she was very good.
Even
She
Auntie
was
Jean
great.
didn't ask any questions. So, yes,
But
but
I
my
did
mother
hear,
has
I heard
been.
on the grapevine that maybe not everything was good. So just quickly maybe address that.
So, my mother has always been very strongly against me writing this story because they grew up with it as an extreme secret and a secret of shame. Like children who suffer abuse feel ashamed. They felt ashamed as the family of the murder victim. And my mother kept saying, it came out in the Truth newspaper in the 50s, and Grandma Fanny had a breakdown. You want to do that to me? No. But actually, she has said after the launch that she is not so afraid anymore. So that's really good. And I think at the end, she began to understand and forgive the man too. By understanding the man and forgiving the man, I'm in no way condoning his actions and this horrible, horrible crime and the other crimes he committed. But I can still have empathy for the perpetrator at the safe distance of a couple of generations, I might add, to
That was going to be
provide that closure.
my next question was going to be, how did the flow on impact? How was the impact? What was the impact of that on the family, and how did that flow on to your generation?
Well, my mother's generation, her father died very young as well. He came back from World War II, very damaged man and very ill, and he spent a long time dying. I don't really talk about what happens in my mother's generation because they're all still alive. So, but I know for me that the echoes have come in multiple traumatic losses, traumatic deaths. And for me, it's been my father, my brother, and my son. So it was like all the boys were being punished. And the echoes, because my brother had a mental illness. So I felt for Joe as soon as I knew he had a mental illness. And I felt for his sisters and his family because I knew what it was like, because my brother was quite seriously mentally ill and could be violent. So I had my brother was bailed up with a knife for a day. I had Maddie's hands around my throat. So I knew what it was like to love someone and fear someone at the same time.
Yeah, great question, Jessie. Thank you. Okay, so
Bev's got her little finger up, but Bev, we've got a lot of time. All right.
Be really quick. I found the whole thing riveting, but the thing that stayed with me afterwards was there was a stigma about it. There was the guilt of your great-grandfather not being there when technically he probably should have been there to protect his family, and the repercussions of that, and your great-grandmother could never really be, and then trying to sell, and because they couldn't get rid of the property because of that. So that was an ongoing guilt, stigma, everything.
Yeah, that's the curse. That's the curse, is that ongoing unforgiveness of self.
Yeah.
It's first of all, you have to forgive the perpetrator, but especially for children who, even though no blame was theirs, they feel it anyway.
But Grace, who it felt should have been her, it was,
yes.
The whole thing just never goes away.
It never goes away, and they never had the tools to deal with it properly. So that's what I was working on, is getting rid of that intergenerational inheritance of unresolved grief and their own self-blame and self-unforgiveness and guilt and shame. That's what I'm trying to clear.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you, darling. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. All right, now we'd better do our workshop.
yes, okay. So we'll do a quick, now we maybe.
Okay. So Kerstin's book, Loving My Lying, Dying Husband, is a fantastic.
Cheating husband.
Cheating. Yes, cheating is the important word.
According to my publisher.
It is a much more traditional memoir. So can you talk a little bit about the differences between the books, Kerstin?
Yeah, so I mean, like you, I had been carrying this story for a long time, only because I'm a procrastinator. And I also didn't know how to start it or how to write it, because I thought it was about grief. Yes, of course, it was about grief, but I thought it was more like an essay about grief and how grief is sort of a last taboo in society. And it really wasn't until And I had a writers group that I led, and I kept writing little bits and pieces, and many of those bits and pieces made it into the book, but I didn't really uh, understand how to write it until I sat down during the pandemic. Suddenly, I had a lot of time. I was locked away at home, I attended an online writing workshop with Wendy Dale, and I have talked about her and shared her new book, The Memoir Engineering Project, which I highly recommend to anybody writing memoir. And she pushed me into writing it in scenes as a traditional, let's say, narrative nonfiction, plot-driven story, which hadn't been at all what I thought I might do. And however, it's the formula that worked because it meant I had to become really, really clear. And one wonderful thing I had done before the pandemic, and of course I didn't know the pandemic was about to hit, I went to a retreat with Jack Burns. She's a literary agent in London, and she hammered into me to think about my premise, and I didn't even know what premise was. It's basically, what is your book about? What is the plot, the story? How does the story actually evolve? And once I had those elements, I could actually start. And Wendy also very much taught us how to write in scenes, and we had already a workshop. I think our last live workshop was in fact about how to write in scenes.
Yeah.
It really changed everything for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Do you want to read us a little bit? So, what happens with a lot of memoir is when people start writing it, they start writing it just telling us. And then, I was born in 19 whatever, and this
exactly.
happened, and then that, and
Yeah.
my grandmother was born in that. No, what we want to do is focus right in on what is your memoir really about. So mine is all related to the effect of this crime on me, my research journey, and the crime itself. Kerstin's is all about the diagnosis and death of her lying, dying, cheating husband. So figuring out how to narrow your focus. It's not the whole life. It can be how one particular theme has played out, those returning patterns, those elements. So I've just been looking at Bev's again, doing a great job, Bev. It's really great. And hers is all focused on the lessons she learned as a palliative care nurse. So in it, she is allowed to bring in her own life earlier than that, revolving around death and grief. Okay, because that shows how she ended up being a palliative care nurse and shows her growth and understanding of compassion, which happens when we go through grief ourselves.
Because like every story, of course, it has to be about the transformation of the character. So it is, at its heart, the hero's journey. Something happens that takes us out of our comfort zone, the inciting incident. And, it goes on and on until what is called in the traditional, the hero's journey, the dark night of the soul. And, you watch any Netflix movie, they follow that formula pretty much. And then the character emerges transformed. So in other words, I had to really look for the story arc. And it's actually much easier in memoir because, of course, the story has happened. So your arc is already there. Right now, for example, I'm thinking, can I write something else that is not memoir, that's not about me? And I have to make everything up, including the story arc. So it could be anything, which of course makes it actually sometimes harder because you can get lost or you can experiment too much. Whereas with a memoir, the story is already there, it's been given to you and you have it. So the other thing I was going to say that I found very helpful, and I didn't expect it to be this helpful, is another exercise we did with Jack Burns in the retreat. And that was write the ending. And I thought, I don't even know how to start this book. How could I possibly know about the ending? So it was one of those exercises where inwardly I thought, oh, this is bullshit. Or I didn't really think that word, but then I wrote the ending and I thought, oh, that's actually not bad. And guess what? That ending is pretty much what is in this book now. It's probably the least changed part of any of the chapters I've written, just because, and it gives you that roadmap. It gives you the end point.
Yes.
It tells you where you need to aim for, where you need to go back to. And so I found that also very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there too and talk about, so there are lots of different ways to use your life for writing. So, where are my books? I don't know, it's all buried.
While you do that, I was just going to say there's, of course, also the essay style memoir.
Yes.
I thought I'll write an essay style memoir about the process of grieving. I was then told essay style memoirs can work, but they work best. The writing has to be incredibly masterful, and
Yeah.
it really helps
Personal
if you
essays are the
already have a
hardest.
name. If you are a nobody, unlikely people will pick it up and get absorbed by it, unless they're your best friends or something, and then it'll be a handful of readers. So unless you are Julia Baird, who's written Phosphorescence and what's the other one? About Grace. Forgotten the exact title now. Those would be essay type memoirs where she reflects on a theme and then uses stories from her life. Or in the case of Phosphorescence, it's about her being, comes face to face with her own mortality because of this cancer that she has.
Yeah. Yeah, so the personal essays you can
Journalist, and
do.
she's a well-known person, so she got away with it. So
Yeah. You can do a memoir like Kerstin's, which is in your own. So that's what The Voice most memoirs are in. One first person narrative, but do try and make it a narrative. There's a lot of freedom in memoir these days, and we do want to use those tools of scenes and also reflection, that benefit of hindsight. But you can also do it. So my first book, Thrill Seekers, which I'm just having reprinted, it is based on my brother's battle with schizophrenia. And basically, it's just heavily disguised and not even that heavily disguised memoir. I just changed myself to a boy in it. So if you are worried about the impact on your family, of angering others, of hurting people's feelings, and so on, you can always choose autobiographical fiction where you take the truth of what is and just start changing the sexes, change the locations, change the small identifying details so that you can still have your truth in there, but you've got that layer of protection for yourself and your family. I mean, they still get upset, but you've got to find some way. But
Gaskell, one of the highest selling British authors, and Gaskell and her books are all about what she learned and her own story.
what's her name?
They're considered historical and romantic fiction.
Yes. So there you go. And whatever kind of writing you do, your emotional truth is going to be in there.
Of course, and there will always be autographical elements in anything you write. And now that I'm sort of going, I'm going back to writing school just because I love, like a sponge. I love reading how others do it. And in fact, Charlotte Wood says she does the same. So I feel better. And I just read about Ian McEwan, I think, something, and it turns out one of the books he wrote is set, in his house. He just used it because he said, I knew it so well, so that's the setting. Or, I'm just sort of playing with ideas, and I thought, oh, I'll set it in the cycling world, and they're all in the velodrome at night. And so you do bring that in anyway, because it also makes it simpler to write, because you already know that world, so you don't have to do tons of research. Yeah. Okay, so scene. Let's just quickly refresh your memory. We have, for example, my book starts with a scene, and I won't read the scene, but I'll just read you the first sentence. Raiding my husband's inbox is a very bad idea, an irreversible act of trespassing. I've told myself this every time I've thought about the password, and for 3 weeks I've thought about nothing else. And then you're literally sitting there with me, my finger over the enter button, going, should I not? And so that's a scene. I slow the narration down, and I take the reader right there with me. I'll make you, experience that sort of anxiety and tension that was in my body as the reader. And I think, and in fact, I know my publisher, when they read that first opening sort of sentences or pages, it hooked them, and that's why they kept going. And so you need to also not only hook your potential agent or publisher, but of course your reader. So, and
but setting up those questions, setting
yes,
up questions. So you're
setting
always
up
thinking
questions.
about your central quest or question for your memoir. Will they find the child? Or we've got Deborah here. Will I find my real family? And then you've got your hope and your fear. Yes, we hope that's going to work out and everything's going to be rosy. And we fear the opposite, that you'll never find them, or if you do, that it's going to be horrible. So whatever your project is, and that's really about figuring out your premise, just what Kerstin was saying, honing in on what that is, and then creating your central quest or question. So mine was, can I forgive the murder of a child? And turns out I can. At a safe.
And I was just giving the example. Oh, what's that?
Oh, that's Catherine Cookson.
Catherine Cookson. Sorry, I got her name wrong. And this is actually the story of her life. She was born an illegitimate child in England, in working class in England in 1906. And it's literally the story of her life and her mum.
And she's just fictionalized it. There you go. Okay, so let's get to writing ourselves, hey? So I've put a couple of links in the chat, which you can use, or you just go to my website, edwinashaw.com, and punch scene into the search bar, and all the articles I've written about writing scenes over the last almost 20 years, 19 years, will be there for you. So what we're going to do is a little relax, come into our bodies, come into our imaginations, and do a writing exercise. So I want you to have in your mind a bad thing in your life that turned out to be a good thing. So just think of something in your life that when it was first happening, you thought, why? Why me? No, no, no. Why did I get fired? Why has my marriage broken down? Why has this happened? Something like that. And then later you figured out, well, actually, boy, I'm so much happier now I left that husband. Or, oh, if I hadn't got fired from that job, I would never have got this other fabulous new job. Okay? So try and think of that, and then I'll give you some more instructions once we're a little bit relaxed. Okay, Kerstin, you want to relax us?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to put the link to our retreats into the the chat box. I'll relax us now. Okay. All right. So just becoming conscious of how you're sitting in the chair. Just pressing your sit bones into the chair, making your spine nice and long and straight, but not rigid. And then just with an in-breath, take your shoulders up and back and down and opening up through the chest. And then just taking a long in-breath and a long, deep out-breath. And just focus on the breath as it flows naturally in and out of your body. And then just coming back to yourself after our little conversation here, staying with the breath, and then connecting with that story that you're driven to write or may have been struggling to write already for a long time. Just sort of connecting with that story now as you continue to breathe slowly and evenly.
Okay.
And then remembering
It's
your
very relaxed state. I want you to imagine that you're surrounded by a force field of golden light, that the golden light is emanating from inside your body, out through the skin in every direction, and creating a giant egg around you, a beautiful creative playground. So when you are thinking back of that bad thing that became a good thing, I want you to remember the turning point when that bad thing happened. So it might have been that last straw that broke the camel's back, like when my ex-husband said I should stop writing. It might be the day you got the sack, or the day that person made it impossible for you to get on the flight on time, or the person that said something that really hurt then but has changed your life. And we're going to write a scene about that moment of that's it, I'm out of here, or having that change forced upon you. So when we're writing a scene, I want you to envision it, if you are able to do so, picturing it or just thinking about it if you're unable to visualize. I want you to look around that room or think of some specific details of the setting where you were. What was the weather like? Where were you? What's something in that setting that reflects the mood? Is there an object or something, a pot bubbling on the stove when you had that last argument that reflects the mood? What can you hear? Are there words trying to put in dialogue? So first we ground our reader in the setting, we look for specific telling details that give us the most information and set the tone. Then we bring in characters in action. So one of those characters is previous you. What were you wearing? You don't have to tell us exactly, but you can maybe remember an outfit for that time. Just give us a little detail. Maybe you can show us another person too, if there's somebody else there, if it's the boss that's firing you. What were they wearing? What were the words? And again, with memoir, we don't need to remember the exact words. Give us the feeling of what they said in the dialogue. It doesn't have to be exact, but just try and include some dialogue. When you are writing dialogue, you are in a scene. So always remember that. If you haven't got dialogue, check that you're not just telling and throw some in. Make sure you've got us there with the character in action. We've got some dialogue and the scene of that last straw that broke the camel's back or that moment of unwelcome change was forced upon you. Okay, I'll give you a quick 6 minutes. So gently bringing yourself back, rousing the body with some big breaths into the chest. Another big one, wriggling fingers and toes. Fluttering your eyes open. Picking up your writing tools and writing about that moment of change. And then if we have any time, see if you can put in a bit of reflection in hindsight. Just a phrase, just a sentence at the end. Off you go. Trying to put some dialogue in there if you can. Last minute now. So if you can, trying to put in a little bit of that reflection that shows as it turned into a good thing.
On the floor, and someone said,
Oh, 8 seconds to go.
Can't hear it.
Oh, you can't hear it. Oh, that's the timer. Ding! I think you'll have to play that at my funeral as the casket is lowered.
All right, so putting the pen down and let's have some.
It
If
wasn't
you
much
like,
time.
we always love it, of course, when our participants share what they've written. I mean, we all know it's raw and it's a draft, but it's fun sometimes to share it, and it gives you also often a lot of confidence. So,
Is anyone feeling brave? I can't bribe you directly with stickers, but I can send you a virtual star or something.
Edwina gives out.
Joe's got her hand up. Come on, Joe.
Is that Joe Skinner?
Yeah.
We should also give a plug to Joe's Borg.
Yes, 2 books. Yeah.
Hello, Joe.
Well, I haven't really written memoirs, not a form that I have really written before. So here we go. Okay. It was not unusual for my father to open my mail. This time felt like a violation, a breach that assaulted me in ways that felt visceral. So you didn't get in. The family thrived on failure. It was a specialty of theirs, of his. Feigned regret, a shadow hiding his glee. We can discuss it over dinner. I wanted to disappear, to leave. The idea of sitting there through one of my father's monologues was excruciating. A bloody cold collation, no concession for my choice to eschew meat. Black bread, a wedge of cheese. It stuck in my throat, choked me like my failure. I dreamt about this for so long, worked so hard. She'll never do it, echoed loud in my ears. His voice a constant in the background. That is when I made up my mind. I would get in. I would go back. I would become a doctor despite their naysaying glee.
Yay! Really good, Joe.
Shaky
You've
voice.
got more memoir. Yeah, it's
Got the cat on the side there.
different, isn't it?
So Jo is actually a GP, is that right? Or medical
Yes.
doctor, and she's also a writer, and she's published 2 books. Can you just quickly name the titles? Because sorry, I can't.
Oh, got it?
The Truth About My Daughter and is the first one, and which has sort of memoirish features now I think about it. And A World of Silence is the second one.
Yeah, and Joe's prolific and does great newsletters too, full of useful information. Is a huge runner. She's running writing if you need to look her up. Yeah.
On Instagram, yes.
Yes. Good on you, Joe. That was
And I really
beautiful.
like that, about I didn't get in, and I'm sure we can all relate to that. It's a bit like opening with a sentence that's so universal, and you're like, okay, you can feel that shame and then also the determination of that person. Yeah, great.
And the specific detail of the black bread and the cheese
Yes.
was what really stuck out to me, because that gives us a little picture of your culture as well, and the family's culture, as well as that glee in failure, which is quite sickening, Joe. And I can see now why you work so hard. Yeah, well done. Thank you. Anybody else want to have a turn? Okay. I saw Rosemary first. Rosemary Harris. Yes, I saw you, Rose. Come on. You have to unmute yourself.
Yep.
Okay.
Hello, Edwina, it's start again. Yes, you've met me before and a little bit of my writing.
Yes.
I don't know if you
I
remember.
I do.
Like I've met you
Yeah.
before, yes.
So, yeah, the track for me is that I have written very copious diaries throughout my life. So when I come to write about a segment of my life, I've got all the diary material there. And so
Yeah, I remember your project.
the trick is to detach myself from that and write it, have it all available, and a lot of it is really great. So just this afternoon, I've started a different book. Anyway, I'm living in this house and my father is living with me. And the hospital told me before, I actually built under the house, lifted the house and built under it, huge year of toil and trouble, and installed him downstairs. He's totally ungrateful for everything. He's very critical. And
That reminds me of a memoir written about cranky parents by a former colleague of mine, The Erratics. It's a brilliant memoir.
oh, that was brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yes, I got it from Avid Reader.
Yes, she was a
Yes.
former colleague of mine. Yeah, at
Yes,
Melbourne.
I totally love that.
Mm.
And anyway, so I'm finding things that really kind of upset me because he was really rude and crude and bad to me.
So let's hear your writing.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I was at a place where I'd gone out for a walk and my dog had been almost killed by a what kind of dog do you call it? A big dog that came across, dashed across the road and locked its jaws around my dog's neck.
See if you can put all of that into the writing, because that's the backstory that you go through the writing.
Yes, yes. Well, my writing is only what I've just done now. And
Yes,
so
but
I'm reading in my diary that I put PS after I described that, and I put PS. I blamed.
You just read us what you wrote?
Yeah, okay, but
because we have very
it
little
won't
time
make
left.
sense. Okay,
Sorry.
so what the raw material I'm working from is that I blamed Dad for his negative attitude. And so because he had an increasingly negative attitude towards my little darling little poodle dog. And just a day before, he said, I don't like that dog. So what do you expect me to do about it? And he said, get rid of it. And so I was just reading that this afternoon and I thought, oh, the right old bastard sort of thing. And then I'm kind of thinking how to write it in the book. And anyway, I wouldn't have done this without your exercise. And so I've just sketched down so as to describe how I felt about Dad. I just described myself looking at Cindy that night and the protective cone around her neck and the poor little dog lying on its, bed feeling kind of very bad. I looked at it and I thought, I'm not even reading this. And I thought about how he'd been increasingly against my dog and wanted to get rid of it. And I thought,
Oh.
Oh,
and I thought, you mean old bastard, you wanted to kill her and you nearly did it. So
Hmm.
I'm blaming him for the near death of
The
my
other,
dog.
yeah, the other
No,
dog. He took the other form. He took the form of the big dog.
yeah. And so I wouldn't have written it that way if you hadn't told me to write a scene. And so I tried to
Yeah.
imagine a
And
scene.
that's a great story that could actually, that's why I brought up the erratics, that memoir, because she does a really good job of taking the reader into those scenes. It's
Yeah.
a bit like, can I actually write that? I'm really cross with dad, the old bugger.
Yeah.
Yes, and that it's
Yeah.
very relatable too. And I was just going to say about you writing diaries or journals. I did that too, and of course, I had a box full of journals that I started my memoir from, and it is a great resource. But when you then start writing, of course, that is just it. It is your
Yeah.
raw material. You're not
Take
writing
notes, but
for
don't keep your diaries beside you. There are too many. Yeah.
Yeah.
for
And
raw
I love the
voice
diaries in Kirsten's book too.
dialogue. Okay, so we've actually reached the 1 hour mark now. But
Yes.
just before we conclude, any other questions or comments? And we also, let's just hear any more questions or comments, just specifically about life writing or perhaps about Edwina's Madman, Dear Madman. And otherwise, we also just want.
David put his hand up. I saw David.
Okay, David, yes, go.
And I saw Deborah too.
Okay, because I'm sorry, I can't see the whole. So David was first.
Yeah.
So
No, false alarm. Sorry.
Oh, false alarm. Oh, he was just waving his arm.
Never put your hand.
Deborah, are you actually real?
I'm real.
You have a question, Deborah?
I've got, yes, I do, about the Madman, Dear Madman, which I've almost finished, and it actually gave me nightmares in some
Oh,
way.
sorry,
So
Deborah. I mean, that's the
it's-
trouble. I've got it off me, but now I'm infecting all of you.
Yeah, but I mean, credit to your skill of writing, though, that you arouse that emotion. But why did you give him voice? It's in
Because
his
I had no choice, because when I started to write, his voice came, and I think it's probably him. I mean, if you want to, I think about this in a very hippy trippy way, okay? So I think that his soul has been entangled with the murdered child's soul. Whenever I went to a psychic and called on the murdered child when I was trying to get her voice for the book, he was always entangled in this dark, dark shadow of him. So he wanted to be free, she wanted to be free, but he was the very strong presence. And anyway, when you reach the end, you'll understand.
I've literally got to the last few pages. I mean, it's a gripping story, but I just thought, I feel sorry for this man. He's horrible, he's evil, but I really feel he had such a rotten start. Nobody loved him. Then he became unlovable, and I didn't want to feel sorry for him, but
I know, I didn't want to feel sorry for him either, because, and when I did, my mother reacted very badly at first.
No, I can imagine. But anyway, thank you for the story, but I'll process my feelings.
I'm sorry, I've infected you all.
And I'm
It's
really
also
finished.
testament to your great writing skill that
It
you
is very much.
captured this complexity and the many layers of this story. And I read one of the drafts, maybe 2 years ago. So the published version obviously is, as every final draft, is so much better than that draft. And you can really tell that you've spent a lot of time working on it, because it's very solid, the way all the different voices and characters do come together.
And it was very tricky, the weaving. The weaving is the hardest bit. The interweaving of the different sections is tricky. Anybody who's written in multiple voices will know this, how much, and don't let, because Joe would have taken over and I had to really wrest back control. So for the first few drafts, and when it went to acquisitions, I think both times, like poor old Jess, I'm so sorry, Jess, but it is a testament to how good it is. It was just the novel version where my voice was not there. I think because I do go into his head, you need my voice telling you that it's all right to be in his head. Something like that.
Yes.
So we have to remind you before we go, we still have, it's really unusual. And if somebody doesn't get these bungalows, we're going to have a bungalow each, which, wouldn't be bad, but we won't be paid much money for all the work we do. But we have 2 bungalows still free for
Bali Eco Stay
Bali
and
Eco Stay.
our Blissful Bali retreat, which runs from June 26th to July 2nd. It's 6 nights. It's all inclusive. The prices are and the way to book is on the website. And this particular retreat, in fact, oh no, it's not Joe. Sorry, I was just thinking confusing Joe and January because there's so many wonderful writers in Brisbane. It's another person I met at your launch. So there's some of the people are already published, and it's always great, that mixture. And there's a really dynamic group coming this year. Some who have been there last year, and it's going to be very exciting. And the thing is, as many of you here, in fact, have been to our retreats, Jess and Jessie and Bev and others, it's wonderful, the synergy that comes from when you write together. Even just this opportunity here to be together this afternoon, I'm already excited. I'm thinking, right, can I get off this call now? Because I want to go back and flesh out that character, because I just had another idea. And I got this idea speaking to you all. So that is what happens when you get together for over a long period. And this is just 1 hour. So a week can really make a difference to your writing. And you'll have
it's such a fabulous place there. It's unbelievable. You drink water from the tap. I wouldn't do it anywhere else in Indonesia or anywhere Southeast Asia, but you can drink it. It's pure spring water. The food is all from their fantastic garden, and there's a waterfall to swim in. We have the whole place to ourselves. So you can't really get much better than that, I don't think. And you've got us on tap, we're with you we get sick of talking by the end of the week. So,
but it's also energizing for us. I got away from the last retreat thinking, I'm teaching all this stuff. Why am I not trying to write another book? So it's energizing in every way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's lovely. And boys can come to that one.
Yes. So it's.
I'm thinking about it.
Well, you'd be very, very welcome. And of course, we've got our Byron retreat now. So we were doing it as a writing for healing, but we've decided to make it just a straight life writing and memoir retreat. And that's in September 19th to the 24th. So if you go to Transformational Writing Retreats, if you go to the chat, we've put up lots of links for you there. So there's the Bali one. Then there's the transformational one, so you can look at everything, because we've still got Italy 2027, Goddess willing, may the idiots fail. That's where to buy Dear Madman. You can also just get it from me if you drop me an email, or from my website, though I think.
And when will Thrill Seekers be available? Somebody asked in the chat.
Thrill Seekers should be available in a couple of weeks. I'm reprinting the grief book, which I'm down to, I just have a cover of. I didn't even keep myself one. And Thrill Seekers are at the printers, and I should have them in a couple of weeks. Yay! And Thrill Seekers, the publisher in England, has given me the rights, so it's coming with my little red-backed wren instead of a raven on it. Yay! But all right, I think that's us. Anybody got any last-minute somethings? There it is.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Joe. Chief salesperson of the Grief Guide. So if you do know somebody, that's everything I've learned from my journey of multiple traumatic losses, and my yoga practice and writing and creativity, with practical advice to help you lessen the pain of grieving, because until it happens, you don't know how much it hurts. Yeah. All right, lovelies. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. Loved it.
Thank you so much for coming. It's always wonderful to see who is getting our newsletter.